All right, everybody, welcome back for another mini session. My name is Mike Martinez with the Maricopa County School Superintendent's Office, the best government office that you all know and love. So thanks again for joining us. If for those people that are watching this on YouTube later, we'll have links to the documents in the description below to our Dropbox. For those of you that are on the meeting now, I will post those links into the chat once we kind of get started. There's a couple of documents that Annette helps to provide for us. So we're going to cover the cleaning up your general ledger just before, hopefully, a lot of you thinking about doing your general ledger rollover. It's that time of year to make sure all of your stuff is as clean as possible before you do that general ledger rollover. So we're going to have Annette Moreno who's going to walk us through that. Annette, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us what we can expect today.
Hello, everyone. Yes, I'm Annette Moreno with the County Schools Office, and I'm really happy to be here with you today. We're just going to cover, general ledger areas where the tools that you have available to help clean up your chart of accounts. And hopefully you can take away some tips, hints, tricks, suggestions, to help you get that cleaned up and moving forward for a new year. So we're ready to go. Mike, have any other thought or words?
Nope, I'm just going to sit back and watch. Okay. I'm uploading the documents now into the chat, so you guys will see those in a moment.
Okay, I have on the screen our handy dandy little training database. It's not perfect, so I'll just apologize now if things go wonky. But this is where we're going to start in the general ledger. Like Mike said, you probably are thinking about rolling over, but if you have already rolled over, it's okay. You can start cleaning up in the new year. You can start this process in either. The first thing, you may have already started doing some cleanup, and the first thing you think about is, oh gosh, I have a ton of accounts out there, inactive or otherwise, that I don't use, and I want to start cleaning those up. And if you've gone in to delete an account, you run into this nice little error message that says, oh, there's budget details attached to the account, you can't delete it. So really, the first place you want to start is in the budgeting area. And we're going to start, and if you have the document, was that shared in the chat? The cleanup? Okay, good. So I'm just going to walk through that document, the chart of accounts cleanup. And the first thing we're going to start with is the budgeting area. So we're going to open up our general ledger. We're going to go into budgeting. And we're going to start with our budget configuration and budget column maintenance. You want to just go review this. Review it for any columns that you may not be using anymore. Again, this rolls over year to year. And so really our recommendation there, our best practice suggestion really is to only keep your final revised budgets for the number of years that you will need to compare against one another. So this list is, it doesn't go too far back, but I'm going to focus in on 17. Maybe we don't need 17 anymore. We'll leave the revised budget alone, but I don't need that second working budget in there. And again, I'll look at the FY18 working budget, probably don't need that column any longer. And once you start cleaning these up, it's easier to get rid of those accounts that you're no longer using or obsolete accounts. So that's what we'll focus in on. So you start with this list and you say, okay, I want to get rid of some of these columns. So what am I going to do that? Well, first of all, you have to clear them. So we're going to get out of here and we're going to use the budget clearing utility. Okay. So we're going to go into budget utilities. Oh, sorry about that. Yep, it was there. Budget utilities, budget clearing utilities. And I first identified the FY17 working budget. So I want to clear that. So I'm just going to click on the little drop down here. I'm going to select my FY17 working budget. And then I'm going to select delete detailed records. That will get rid of every budget detail for every account. Just a word of caution here that you may want to go out and use the budget export utility, and I'll show that utility in a minute. Before you start clearing any, especially your revised or your adopted budget columns, it's always handy if you have a backup copy, because if something gets cleared and it wasn't the right one and it was really your adopted budget and you want it back, you're not going to be able to get that back. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and just click OK, and I'm going to clear this detailed records for the FY17 working budget. Already cleared. Nice little message, is cleared. Okay. So now we're going to go in and we'll go back and we're going to go back into the budget column maintenance. And now we should be able to delete this budget column. Okay. So we're just going to right click on that. You highlight it, right click, and you delete. And it's gone. Okay. So this is also where you're going to delete, of course, we just deleted. We're going to add, and we're going to edit these records if you need to. So adding, you can go ahead and add budget columns that you need for the new year. You can add your working or revised budget if you're in the current year now, set up a new revised budget column and so forth. So to do that, of course, you just do a right click and you can add, edit, delete. There are your options. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to go into the budget export utility. And in one of the bullets there in the middle of the page, after you roll over, you may have already started your revised budget for the May budget revision, and it wasn't quite done. So what you'll want to do is, after you finish your revised budget, you probably want to export it and then import it into the new year so that you have all the current figures in the new year for your revised budget of the current year. So I thought I would go through that export utility. With you. So again, in budgeting, export utilities, we're going to go here to that menu and we're going to do a budget export. Okay, so here are the filter criteria. If you wanted to just do one fund, you could limit the fund by the account filter here. You could do account types. Here's the drop down for that. You could just do expenditure types. Here, I'm going to focus in on what budget column I want to export. So for now, today's example, I'm using the FY21 working budget. Now, what you want to do here is you want all of the figures to come over. You want your FTE to come out and you want your amounts to come out. So I'm going to uncheck those boxes, and then I'm going to apply the selection. And it's going to bring over all the accounts. This is also the way you will make a copy of your budget columns. So if you wanted to just limit it down to the expenditure accounts, of course, use your account filter with a 6 here. But I took all. Some districts still do a revenue budget, so that will come over also in the budget figures. Okay, so then we will go to actions and you can export to Excel. Opens up Excel and there's your copy. You can do a file save as and save it off to a folder where you would save all of your budget columns as a backup copy. And that, I believe, is one of our suggestions, handy dandy suggestions, is to keep a folder where you can store your budget export files in case one accidentally gets cleared. So like I said before, you want to export the budget columns that you may want to keep and clean them up by removing all the accounts with a zero amount. So in this Excel file, you could actually do some filtering and filter down on those accounts with a zero amount. And you could delete those from the Excel file and then go back and import those, that budget into Visions again, and it would clear up all of those budget details for the accounts that you may not use anymore, or obsolete accounts. Of course, that's after you've cleared the budget column. So you'd want to clear the budget column and then import this updated budget column information into that. And then it would be clean enough for you to go back and start deleting some accounts. Okay, so like I said, you can filter down on the zeros, get rid of things that you don't want, update whatever it is you need, or just save it as a backup copy to your folder. I'm not going to do that just yet. I have a copy already saved. So. Okay. Okay, we're going to move on. I think I'm on page 3 here. So now we're ready to import that information. And we're going to go in again to the import export utilities, the budget import. Okay, so what's important here is that your Excel spreadsheet has columns identified for the account, description, the FTE, all of these areas, the FTE column, amount, position column, and so forth. So one of the things you want to do is first pull up your Excel file. And you want to be sure that the columns are matching up. You can, add things if you want to in different columns into this Excel file for notes and things like that. But you want to be sure that you match up the account column to whatever column is that information is in. So everything is pretty much lined up if you leave that Excel file alone. But if you start moving things around, you may need to just double check this. The account column is A, description column is B, FTE column is D, and the amount column is E. So we're all aligned, and position description is F. Still aligned, so that's good. That's what you want. Okay, so what's important here? Oh, also the worksheet is always going to be sheet 1. It could be different if you have it in a different tab or sheet at the bottom. Just make sure it's named sheet 1 or whatever it is in here on your in Visions, the worksheet field. Okay, so what also is important here is these 2 boxes on the right. Delete all detail for budget column. So when you import the Excel information and you're ready to post, if you select delete all detail for budget column, it's going to replace what is in Visions. Okay, if you do not check this, it's going to add to what you have in Visions in your budget column. Okay, so most likely we want to replace. So I'm going to check that box.
I just want to throw in a little side note here. That box is single-handedly responsible for wiping out the budgets at school districts throughout Maricopa County and the state of Arizona. So be very careful when you use that box. So if you are the kind of person that's like, oh, I'm going to import my M&O budgets today, and it's like, okay. And then tomorrow it's like, oh, I'm going to import my grants budgets today, and suddenly you find out half your budget is gone. It's that box that did it every single time.
Yes.
So be very careful. That box, if it's not on the spreadsheet you are importing, it removes everything in that budget column, replaces with that spreadsheet that you are importing. I also want to add in there, if you didn't see the note in the chat, we did have some audio issues kind of popped on and off with the net stream. I did turn off all the video feeds except myself and Annette, and it seems to kind of be making a difference. We'll kind of monitor as time goes on. So I apologize for that. We have no control over the speed of the internet. Apparently, all of the who would have thought that thousands of kids schooling online would take up all of our internet bandwidth? I don't know.
Yes.
Annette, I'm turning it back over to you.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks for pointing that out. And so, so the next box here, delete detail for imported account, that is useful when you're importing just say one fund, like Mike was explaining. If you're doing it fund by fund, you've imported just M&O. I use that box to just delete everything for only the imported accounts. So that one is most likely the one you'll use if you're doing it fund by fund or any other way other than, all at once. Okay. So we're just going to get rid of that and that. So to import that Excel file, you're going to go to Actions and Import from Excel. And I have my little Excel file here. So we're going to just open that and it's going to populate the grid.
One eternity later.
There it is. Okay. Okay, so the FTE amount down here in the bottom, and then also the amount, budget amounts here. So we're going to go back to the Excel. Oh, did I close it earlier? Here, let me open that again.
You do have to close it before you import it or it gives you an error.
Yes, correct. That's what happened. Okay, so on the FTE amount, of course, you just want to do a quick total there. And the sum is 0. So back over here, we're going to look and we have a sum of 0. And I'm going to just make this a little smaller here. And so then on the amount, we're just going to do a quick sum there. And we're matching 26,290,307.55. So that's just my little quick check. It brought everything in. Okay. So then I'm ready. If I think I'm really ready to go, I decide, what am I doing? Do I want to replace my budget column, or am I working just with one fund and I want to do a delete detail for each imported account? So I will make a decision then, but I'm not going to do anything just to our database. But the next action is to post your entries if you are satisfied that they are correct. Okay, and that'll take a little bit of time. So we're going to move on. Are there any questions or anything in the chat? I'm not really paying attention to that. I hope I have my team behind me. So anything?
Yeah, chat's pretty quiet for now. So we are taking a look at it. Again, the documents are out there in the chat if you haven't downloaded them already. But so far, so good, Annette.
Okay. Okay, then the next section, still on page 3, I believe, chart of accounts. So we're ready to start looking at, identifying what accounts out there I should delete or just maybe inactivate and just kind of move on. So how do we do that? So the first thing we want to do is maybe look at our account elements. And that is going to be in our chart of accounts and account elements. And I'm just going to apply selection because I want everything to come into the grid. And so you can, spend some time going through this, looking at everything right here in the grid, or you can do a right click and you can actually export this to Excel, which is what I have done in the past, so that I could make notes on these are the funds that I want to take a look at. They're no longer, used, they haven't been used for 10 years, and things like that. I just need to maybe change the description to say, use on fiscal year 10, or do not use again, or whatever it is you want to do with those elements. So export to Excel is my suggestion, but you could also just do a listing if you want to print something. It prints kind of funny, because it has several different fields, but so my suggestion really is to export to Excel. So I'm just going to do that quickly. Did it open over here? Yep. Okay. All right. So let me make this a little bigger here. So again, you can get rid of the columns that you don't want. You can add a little notes column if you want. But I would normally just go in and kind of highlight like, oh my gosh, 60 undesignated. I don't know if I need that anymore. Student success, I might want to take a look at that. That's kind of an older fund. One thing I did notice in our training database is 625, which, I think we used last in fiscal year 12 or 13. So those are just some of the things, to look at. Objects, the chart of accounts, USFR chart of accounts has changed. You should go in here every year and just update descriptions if they've changed, just so you're staying up to date. And, with doing the AFR this past year, we were all required to put in, or import all of our, basically our transactions into the AFR, all of our accounts, and so forth. And even we share our chart of accounts with them. So it is really a good time to start cleaning up before sharing all this information with other agencies. It can be kind of embarrassing if we're hanging on to too much, kind of hoarding, or, so we really do want to get, it's a new year. So I say, you know what, out with the old, in with the new, just clean things up, make it pretty. So, it's just cleaner, and it really is more efficient in Visions if, you've streamlined your chart of accounts. Also, just again, sharing outside of your organization. So just a little bit about that, maybe a hint or suggestion. You might want to start with just looking at your elements and what elements maybe there's some accounts to clean up. So we're going to just close that. I'm not going to save that. Okay, and so if you want to change anything in here, you want to just double click on it, open it, change the description, whatever it is that you need to change. Add is the same, do a right click, add an element if there's a new element that you need to add. Okay. All right, so talked about that. All right, we're moving on to the next page here. So there is another way to identify accounts that maybe just don't have any history. There's a nice utility, and it's an account transaction history. So we're going to go and use transaction inquiry and the journal detail. So if you identify an account that you maybe wonder, I wonder when that was last used, you can use the account filter. And I'm just going to pull up, I know that there's an old account here. So I'm going to do my filter and transaction. And this nice little utility here, or a checkbox, is include GL history. So I can click on this, but the caveat is that you need to have history connection groups set up. And I will go show you where that information is also, so you can be sure that it's set up to be able to give you some history. I'm just going to apply selection really quick here because I want to show you and yes, it's going to give you a warning. If you don't filter down on account filter, it could be a lot of data. So you want to be sure, you know what you're doing here. So do you wish to continue? Yes, because I only have one account. So and there's no history. But what I wanted to show here is in this, there is the fiscal year is really what you're looking for in here. So what fiscal year was that account code last used? So that's very useful information. Okay, so just to identify accounts that maybe you want to go ahead and inactivate or delete. Okay. All right, so let's go. I'll show you the account history really quick. And you'll find that the history connection groups, in security. And under workflow configuration, you have history connection groups. We don't have any connection groups, we only have one, but you would see a list here. And if you didn't see the last fiscal year, you would want to add that. And these roll over from year to year. And so, just the fiscal year rollover, it will roll over for you. You just may want to check to be sure that we have last year's FY20 set up. Okay, so to do that, if you need to add something, you just right click and you click on add, and then you just select your connection group and whatever information you need here. Okay. I'm going to cancel. We don't have any other connection groups. Okay, so we're gonna go back. All right, so we're ready to go into account code input. And that is where you will find your accounts. So chart of accounts, account code input. So at the top here, we have account filter. You can filter down on accounts by element. There's a show only drop-down box here. So you can show your active accounts, inactive accounts, active accounts not assigned to a DAC, active accounts not assigned to a budget control group. So this is where you maintain all of your accounts and their status and any budget control groups that they're attached to and so forth. Okay, so I'm going to just show you maybe how to filter. I mean, you all know how to filter down on an element. So I'm going to just start with 625. And I want to see if there's active accounts for 625. And there is one. So I'm going to try to get rid of this one. So first of all, I'm just going to show you how to inactivate accounts. So when you bring up a group of accounts here on the grid, you can just go to actions and you can update the account status. Okay. And it will update all of the accounts on the grid. And I'm going to change this to inactive. And it has been changed. And so right now it went away because I'm showing only my active accounts. So if I go to inactive accounts now and apply my selection, there are my inactive accounts for 625. So those are the ones that I want to delete. And I'm going to try to delete them. And I'm going to apologize. I hear the nice jets out here at Luke Air Force Base flying overhead. So I apologize if you're all hearing the noise. I will try to speak louder than them.
That's the sound of freedom, Annette.
Mm-hmm. And every day it's wonderful to hear. Okay, so now I have these accounts and I'm going to go down. And I noticed right away in my elements that I had 6730 out there as an object. And I know that the most recent changes in the USFR, detailed out what we are to be coding to, capital equipment. So it has to be more detailed than a 6730. But I don't find that. Actually, I do find that account right there. So I'm going to just highlight that, and I'm going to try to delete this. So I can go either, I'm going to do a right click and I'm going to choose delete right in the grid. Are you sure you want to remove the selected row? Yes. And it let me delete it. So apparently I've cleared enough budget column detail in order for me to delete that account. So I'm just going to go ahead and select another one. I'm just going to kind of go along here and see if any of these have budget column detail, which probably not. So no luck there. But anyway, you would get a message if there were budget detail information out there for an account, even though it's inactive. It can have budget detail. And in that case, let's just look at this 625, 1000, 6700. I'm going to go back over to my clearing, and I'm going to show you how to just clear that for one account. You can use the clearing utility under budget utilities, budget clearing utility. You can just select one account. So I'm going to just do 625, and it was 6,700. 6,700. And I'm going to zero the budget and FE amounts. And I'm going to select, say, you know, it went back, there was detail in FY18 working budget. You select the budget column that the detail, you know, there may be detail for that account. Select the zero budget and FT amounts. Actually, I'm going to unmark that, and I'm going to say delete detail records. You want to delete all the detail records for that account. So you say okay, and it just deletes that account's budget detail in that column. And it is cleared. So I just wanted to show you how you can use this utility just for a specific account. Or a range if you're using the question mark ranges and so forth. So, all right. Okay, so moving on, we're going to move on to I've inactivated account, I've deleted an account. Really, I guess I have gone through all of the utilities that I wanted to show today. Are there any questions?
Okay, so I did get a question, just kind of came across. It's a good question. When deleting FY data in one connection group, will it affect another connection group? So if you remove an account code from FY 2021, does it also remove that account code from 1920? So the short answer is no, it doesn't. When you clean up account code, you're cleaning up just in the connection group where you are doing that deleting and that cleaning up, with the idea of you clean it up now so that when you create and you roll over your FY22, that account code is no longer there, and everything gets clean going forward. However, that account code still had transactions in the past, so all those items in 1920, 18, 19, all those items still exist in those old years. So you just won't be able to see them in the current year. So if you look at like the GL history feature that Annette showed you in the transaction inquiry, you're not going to be able to really pull up those accounts because those don't exist in 21. But if you signed into 1920, you'll still be able to see all that stuff up. So that's the cool thing, or a nice thing about Innovative Visions is that all these fiscal year stuffs are, they're separated by year. So you can clean up this year and not mess up last year, and just keep things as smooth and clean and as efficient as possible going forward. Good question, thanks.
And one thing about the account elements, you know, in my experience, I wanted to know the history. You know, there were several funds that were used, like Fund 80, Student Success. I would always go in and put a fiscal year the last fiscal year. So I knew, you know, moving forward, when was that used? So just kind of a hint or suggestion, you may want to just, if there are older funds, you may want to just add a little bit to the description. So when you're looking through here, you know, kind of when that was last used, or when it became obsolete. So then you know, it helps you to identify those accounts out there that might need to be deleted and cleaned up. So, and again, we're sharing this with the Auditor General, and so they'll be able to see that also. Oh, they're not using that, you know, or, you know, that's just an old fund sitting out there. So just, you know, it does, you do have the ability to change these descriptions to fit your needs in helping you to move forward from year to year. And I kept my Excel spreadsheet with notes, you know, saying, oh, I got to go next year and I can delete these accounts, or, you know, in FY23, these can be deleted, whatever. Because it's, you know, it does take some time to go through and identify, you know, what it is you need to clean up. And at the time, write notes so that you can see that in the future year and say, okay, I can go do that now. So just just some advice from experience. Okay, so I did not touch, there is one more area under the chart of accounts here, budget control groups. We did share that extra document. I didn't want to get too much involved, but that is another area that you will want to go in and take a look, just review. Are you using budget control groups? If you are, maybe there are some that need to be cleaned up. Again, this is, you know, where you set them up. You can delete them or change the name or the group name, and just, you know, do some cleanup here, add if you need to. And you can find the budget control group assignments here in the account code input. And so let's just, I don't know, let's take this for example. We'll do 625. And these are inactive, so I wouldn't want to do this, but you get the gist of it. Anything on the grid, you will, so this is kind of the opposite of changing the status of an account. So you want to highlight the accounts that you want to assign a budget control group. Okay, so you just highlight them, you go to actions, and you assign a budget control group. Okay, so if you want to unassign a budget control group to a group of accounts, you leave this blank, and it will remove whatever budget control group it was assigned, and it will be blank. Okay. So here, if you want to assign, you select. If you don't want to assign, if they are assigned and you want to unassign them, you leave a blank and it will unassign them. So that's just a little bit about cleaning up budget control groups. Okay, well, I have reached the end of the materials. If there aren't any questions, I just want to thank everybody for being, you know, being here today, listening to me again, and hopefully you take away some little hint or suggestion that will help you in your cleanup and starting the new year off to a good start.
So there are a couple of questions that came through on the chat. I just want to address those for anyone who's watching this recording later. First of all, yes, this webinar is being recorded. All the mini sessions are recorded. They'll be posted on YouTube later. If you're registered, you'll get the early link. Otherwise, I'll send it to the EASE mailing list probably Friday, because we're having these later in the afternoon. It takes me a little bit of time to get the videos together. So those will be sent out. So don't worry about it if you missed part of it. Or you want to go over some more stuff, that will be available. There was also a question on what would be the difference, or what would be the reason behind inactivating an account as opposed to deleting an account. So Tracy's response, Tracy Rockwell, her response was best practice: inactivate it first and then delete it when you know it's no longer going to be used. And her recommendation is not to delete until after 5 fiscal years have passed. That to me seems like an extraordinarily long amount of time. I mean, it's past your actual record retention for a lot of these things that you're looking at anyway. So you really kind of have to go, Tracy's recommendation, wait 5 years. Some of these accounts are already older than 5 years. Either or. Best practice though, definitely inactivate them first. That way you can always reactivate them if you find out that you need them later. If you have to import something or you're looking something up, it's easier to reactivate than just re-add. Re-add throws everything kind of out of sync. Another thing I want to throw out there is that for those districts that we host, we actually have scripts on hand that if you have a list of accounts that you want to deactivate or you need to remove, if you send us that list, whether it be like a text file or an Excel file or a CSV, we can actually mass inactivate your accounts from any sort of file list. So you can send that to us and we'll take care of that for you. It's actually relatively easy to do. I think we started offering that up about several years ago when Gene Bandez was out consulting at a couple districts, and we ran across a lot of issues and we had to dig out a way to mass inactivate. So that option is available if we host your data through the Maricopa County School Superintendent's Office. I think that's everything. Yes.
Just one more comment on the, how long should I keep or inactivate accounts? And I kind of just, developed my own strategy is, well, I only really wanted to keep 5 years worth of budget information. So that was kind of my, okay, I'm only going to keep accounts for 5 years, because I want to be able to go back and compare the 5 years transactions, and so that was kind of the reasoning that I would have inactivated an account moving forward. I didn't want anybody to use it, say in the next fiscal year, but it was still valuable to me, 2 or 3 years ago. So that was kind of a reasoning. So, just go with your own strategy of how far back you're using budget information. And so that will help you if you just stay with the same strategy of cleanup.
It looks like that's kind of all the questions we have in chat. Thank you, Annette, for another great session. How many have you done of these now? 3, 4, 10?
Yeah, 3. I think 3.
All right. So they're all great. Again, all of these sessions are available on the YouTube, so go ahead and check them out. Other than that, thank you everybody for joining us today. If you guys are coming back tomorrow, we have a contract session tomorrow. We'll be covering contracts. Andy De La Rosa from our office will be covering Contracts 101, kind of go over the basics and how contracts is generated. So thanks everyone. Thank you, Annette, for a great job today. That is all for us. Have a great week. Be safe out there. Go get your freaking shot, because if you're listening to this, chances are you are eligible to get one already. So go get your vaccine. Thanks everybody. Talk to you next time. Have a good one.
I just heard the jets coming in for a landing, so hopefully they're done.
In your dreams, lady.
I know.
But to beat the to beat the name sort, you have to.
I know what you're saying.
Alphabet.